Hello everybody, I have another video for you today. It's Reality Simulation Matrix Part 2. If you haven't watched Part 1, I recommend you do so because it's kind of like the predecessor to what we're going to discuss today, and I think this is really important for this information to be shared because I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it. And this is particularly talking about what the purpose is of the game. So if you've seen video number 1, which is part 1, which is about the game player and the observer, I talked about how there is part of our consciousness that we can call the higher self that is watching the game as it's unfolding in real time, while also being out of time and having that perception of knowing things ahead of time, knowing exactly what's going to happen, knowing what it takes to win the game. And also the other part of the consciousness is the actual avatar playing the game that doesn't have that overlay and doesn't know exactly where they're going or even why they're playing this game, but they're guided by something and they feel the need to get to a milestone or to accomplish something. We didn't really know exactly what the point of the game is. And this part 2 kind of displays that and reveals at least a big chunk of what the purpose of the game of life is. And it fascinated me. It was an overwhelmingly intense experience. I'll do my best to describe to you what happened, and I'll tell it like it happened, like a story, as if you're watching a movie. But I was not watching it like a movie. I was actually in it, and I had a role to play in it. This is parallel reality. It's a higher dimensional reality, and this was like an out-of-body experience. I began to experience the OBE on a spaceship. And I found myself in this male body, different from the first dream. The first dream, I was still young in my early 20s, but in this dream, I was in my 50s. I was on board of a spaceship, and I was, again, this man, which I believe to be my higher self. And this man also had a rich, powerful father. Ancient soul. I do remember a scene where I was having an argument with my dad, and my dad was trying to convince me to take part in the game, and I was objecting to it. I did not want it. I did not want to take part in the game, and he kept convincing me, and he kept arguing with me until I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna do it. So that was happening in multiple levels of reality. That was happening on the spaceship, as well as it was happening in the 3D life. Like I said, the 3D life was short and dim. The thing that amazed me the most is what's about to happen on the spaceship. So I agreed to partake in this game, and it was almost like taken for granted. Like I knew that I was at that level, that I'm gonna win this game. I knew it. I was just reluctant to take part in the game, and I'm going to discuss more about that later and why I was feeling reluctant. But it will all make sense in the end, I promise. I took part in the game. This time the game was an actual ball game. You can say it was like kickball. And it took place inside a simulator on a spaceship. So on board of a spaceship, there was a room that was the dome. The simulator dome, where you could simulate the Earth gravity. You could simulate pretty much the physical laws of Earth, of being in 3D reality inside of this dome. So there was a green field, there were 2 goal nets, there were 2 teams. My consciousness immediately got injected into the game. As soon as I agreed that I'm playing the game, I found myself on the court, inside of a dome. So I was aware that there were borders of the dome. There was a green field and other players, and there was a ball that looks just like a kickball. So it's very similar to a kickball, but with goals. We were tossing the ball with hands and kicking it with feet. I knew that I was gonna win. This is my personality. My true essence is I'm competitive. I love playing sports since I was a kid, so this was easy for me. Like, this game was exciting, but I knew I was gonna win. And I was tossing the ball. I had a hard time figuring out who my team players are, but I had a team of 4. We were 4 players in the court itself, and there was a goalkeeper. No, actually, we were 3 players in the court, and there was a goalkeeper, so we were 4 in total. The physics of the simulation room was very similar to Earth, but yet was still a little bit wonky. It was not exactly like you would be on Earth. Like, gravity was a little bit wonky. It was as if you're trying to play a game of ball underwater and in outer space at the same time. So there was just more density and less gravity to the ball. So it was just interesting tossing the ball across the distance of time and having it land, and like the other team was trying to intercept the shots, and eventually we won the game. My team, we won the game, and the other team did not win. Now, this had repercussions because whoever won that game was, and this is the really interesting part, whoever won that game was allowed to ascend to a higher dimension. So, what does that mean exactly when we talk about ascension? Like, the New Age community talks about ascension, but I've never actually seen anybody explain it in practical, pragmatic terms. Like, what does this actually mean? So this is what I'm about to discuss with you, the mechanics of ascension and what really happens when you ascend to a higher dimension. So based on who won the game, the simulation game, which you can say the 3D life is a metaphor for that simulation game. Whoever wins this game gets to ascend to a higher dimension of reality. What happens to the losers? Okay, well, that's an interesting question because it's more nuanced than you think it is. So the score is not kept according to who has the higher score. Like, we got 8 and they got 7 or something. So it's not about how many goals you scored. It was about your level of participation and your initiative in the game. Meaning, you can be on the losing team who didn't score high enough, but you can still be a winner if you participated with proactiveness and eagerness in the game and you took initiative. That's the most important thing. Taking initiative and participating in the game and working with your other team players. Like I said, when I landed in the game, I didn't even know who my team players are. You're kind of put on the spot, and I had to figure it out in the moment. And my consciousness was playing this game, so I was not watching this. I was in the game playing it myself. And there was one person on the other team. He was kind of like running around and not really participating, almost like just watching the game unfold, waiting for someone to toss him the ball. He was basically just running up and down the court and not really taking initiative. Now this guy, he got treated, we considered him on the spaceship. So my father was there. Like I said, my father was on the spaceship, getting me to play the game, setting up the simulation. I believe he was the creator of the simulation room, technologically speaking. And he gets to decide like what happens next. So my father, who was this very powerful person, ancient soul, got to decide what's gonna happen next. This is what I call like maybe the higher self. Like, it's a higher dimension of reality than me on the spaceship. It was an even higher, like more authoritarian. He was the space navigator of the spaceship. So he was the admiral. He was the space admiral of the spaceship, and he got to decide what's going to happen. So what happened to this guy who we refer to him as like a busboy. He was basically just like a busboy, like an assistant, getting people what they need on the spaceship. And I think because of his presence on the spaceship, he was allowed to participate in the game, but he was not at the level of consciousness that will allow him to win. So what was done, and this is where it gets really brutal, is all of a sudden there was an emergency alarm in the spaceship, like teet, 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 and there was just like a red light that was lighting up. And I was gonna go get the door. Like there was someone coming and I was gonna go get the door, and I was like, what's happening? What's going on? And I went to the door and I opened the door, and then there's like a group of soldiers that came running. They were very robotic, and they looked human, as in they're in a human body, but they felt very robotic to me. The eyes were much bigger than normal, very muscular, very strong, completely in armor, and they had different weapons that they were using. So what happened is they immediately injected that person, the busboy, with like a knife, one of the weapons. They basically murdered him. They basically killed him, which is not like the way that we perceive kill. It's like he was sent back to 3D life. He was sent back to Earth. He was sent back to the reincarnation wheel. So this is really important, because the loser team, the other team that did not win, they were not sent back. I don't know what happened to them. It was not my concern. I was more concerned with my experience and what I have witnessed happened to this busboy, and he was completely ejected from the spaceship. He went back to the reincarnation cycle. So this is what happens for people who do not participate in the game. They just keep reincarnating until they win the game, until they were able to ascend to a higher dimension. So after that, and that was brutal, and my father, who's the space admiral, he's the general, he called the soldiers, or it was automated. Like I knew that he was calling the shots, and I knew that he sent that guy back. He was a young man, innocent, just like a nice guy, you know, like your next door neighbor, like a really nice guy. But unfortunately for him, that was not enough. Like being nice and passive was not enough. So he was just brutally ejected out of the ship, back into the reincarnation cycle. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. So what happens next is, I didn't forget, but now I'm gonna mention that detail about my father, and I said that he had an ancient soul. I knew that he was at least 1,000 years old. Like, I knew that his soul was eternal. He was so ancient to me, but he was in a young body. He was in the body of a 20-year-old. And I, his son, I was in my 50s, you could say, early 50s. So I had the body of an aging man. I was older than him in age, but I knew that he was ancient. But he was in a forever young bodysuit. He was in a forever young body. A body that doesn't age. So this is what happens when you win the game. You transcend to this higher dimension, and you get the forever young body. You get an immortal body, where the body doesn't age, it doesn't decay with time. You're no longer aging. So this is what happened to me on the spaceship. And I think my reluctance to get the forever young body is I was attached, not to the reincarnation cycle per se, but I was feeling like I didn't want to betray my fellow humans, or I didn't want that, you know, when sometimes like if a father has like an establishment and they're like ready to pass it on to the son or something like that, and the son is like resistant, like he doesn't want that level of responsibility. He doesn't want it, even though he has he has the capacity. and he's there. Like he's there at that level of evolution, but he's been procrastinating on that time and time again, and that was me. And I remember arguing with him and fighting over and over again. But this experience was when he actually convinced me to just participate in the simulation, like one more time or something, like this dome, the simulation dome on the spaceship, with my team members. I had a team. I was not working alone, and we all won, which means I imagine we're all gonna get the transmutation, the body transmutation, the metamorphosis. I don't know what happened to them. This was particularly my personal experience, so I'm gonna share what happened next. My dad took me to, and by the way, also my mom was there, and she also had a forever young body, but she was just being the silent observer. Like, she didn't have a role to play in this experience in particular, but I was aware of her presence. What happens next is my dad took me to another room where there was a glass capsule. It's a capsule inside of a room, where when you go and sleep inside of that capsule, it's like all-encompassing oval shape. That's when the transmutation happens. So I went inside, and the most magnificent process happened in front of my eyes. It was so extreme and so intense that my consciousness stepped out of the body, out of my body, to watch it. So at some point I was standing next to my dad, watching, or next to my father, watching what's happening to my body unfold in real time. And it was the most amazing experience, but I could tell the body was in pain. I could tell he was screaming in pain. It was a light treatment. It was a light fusion, or some kind of a cellular fusion, and it was fractal in nature. So I could see everything in color fractals. I could see what was happening to the body. It was a light body, but it looked like a human body with skin and bone and everything, but I was only seeing the layer of what's actually happening to the light body, what's actually happening on a deep DNA, on a cellular level, where the light codes were going from, like, let's say it was like fractal shaped, being divided. Like, let's say you divide a circle into two, and then it's Vesica Pisces, and then you divide the 2 circles into 4, and then you divide the 4 into 16, and so on and so forth, like 48, 128, and then it keeps dividing into smaller, like more geometric, detailed image, all in light and color. It was red, it was mostly infrared, like reds, oranges, and bright white light, and I could see the shapes morph and transfuse itself. I was able to witness the process of the human physical body changing from a decaying body into an immortal body, and it was the most magnificent experience of my life. And like I said, the body was in pain. He was screaming because it was so intense. But that's when my consciousness stepped out of the body and I was able to watch it. So I kind of doodled a little bit here. I'm going to show you. So there, that was me. That's the blob of consciousness. It's not a body, it's a blob of light. It's that observer that I talked about in the first dream. And then my father was right next to me, and then here I am laying inside of the capsule, the glass capsule, and undergoing this metamorphosis, this transmutation of the body. And then I became, and that's the trickiest part for me to understand and to resolve, but I became my father, because we looked exactly the same. And that's the metaphor, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Even though I'm not born Christian, but I do understand the Trinity, and I do understand the metaphor here. So there is something to that. So I became my father. After this process was over, I became, like, that's when my experience ended, but I knew that I became him. I became him in the immortal body. So as I was stepping into the capsule, I could see that his body was perfect, like a 20-year-old, muscles and all. But from my perspective, I guess in the 4D, because he was a higher dimensional being than me. So there are 3 layers of reality in this experience, and that also I want you to be aware of. Like this life, the 3D life, within the time-space continuum, 4D, that's one dimensional. And then there is the spaceship. That's a whole other dimension of reality. And yes, there are humans on spaceships. And yes, we do have the technology. And I do believe that what I've seen, what I experienced, is something that has already happened. Yeah. And there was this dimension of the spaceship itself. Within it, there was the dome where you could simulate the 3D reality, but it was in a higher dimension. Let's call it 5D. And I was present there, still in my decaying body, but in a higher dimension that allows me to be on the spaceship, that allows me to have this conversation with my father. So I was not just operating from the 3D day-to-day consciousness. I was operating on a higher dimension, but still in my decaying body, communicating with an immortal being that was face-to-face with me, convincing me to undergo the transmutation process that will allow me to have a forever young body. So that's a whole other dimension of reality. Like the 5D is kind of like the transient in between, and maybe my father was in what you can call 6D. I don't know if I have the numbers right, but this is just an example to clarify the different levels of reality. When they sent that guy back, they were sending him back to the 3D life, which from my perception was very dull and very limited. And that the true reality is the man on the spaceship, the Father in the sky. So Father in the heavens, and that was not necessarily my belief system per se. Like I said, I'm not born Christian. I don't really believe in Father in the sky, but it was literally Father in the sky communicating with me from the spaceship, and I was up there with him, undergoing this whole process. So I saw that my father had a forever young body, and I saw that he looked like a 20-year-old, and that I looked older than him. But I knew that he was much older than me. He was ancient. Not necessarily much older. I just knew he was an ancient soul. Thousands of years old. But he's no longer doing the reincarnation cycle for a reason. He's actually, like I said, the navigator, the manager. And that's why when people get sent back over and over again to do another life, to do another 3D life, I'm sorry to say, it's not up to them. It's not up to them. And that's why we get all these experiences and the near-death experiences, like all the manipulation and all the angels and Jesus and all these light shows and projection games to get the people back into the life. It's because they haven't won the game and they need to win the game to advance. The universe is all about evolution, spiritual evolution. And that's why we're playing this game. But it's very physical. It's connected to a physical reality in multiple levels. In a 3D life, it's kind of in a bubble where you don't really access the higher dimensions. Once you cross that threshold, you're able to access higher dimensions of being and interact with them. So, in a nutshell, this is basically what this out-of-body experience was. And I'm gonna just look on my notes because I wrote things upon waking. Yeah, it's good to know some of the details, that some of my team members were female. Like there was a female and 2 males, so it was not just like all males. I think that's important, but I was a male, so and I've been, my higher self is a male. And I mean, according to these out-of-body experiences, because the soul can express itself in different genders. But this, what you're seeing right now, me, this person, this is an avatar. And I'm running on the avatar psyche. But my avatar psyche, because of the soul and because of the will and free will, you are able to connect with your higher self-consciousness. And that's a practice that I've been doing for years, many, many years, to be able to get to that level with scrutiny. Because I'm a skeptic and I came from a science background. I studied computer science. I was completely left-brained. I didn't even believe in angels or spirits or any of the spiritual dimensions. Did not believe in any of it. So I'm always like skeptical with any form of communication that happens, but I'm at that level where I can confidently say that I've established this connection with my higher self that I believed was my creator. So if you've watched my other video, which is the shamanic experience, the shamanic journey, and I was talking about this scientist, the genetic engineer that seeded this world, that is the higher self, that is the father in the spaceship that's in a forever young body. And when he appeared to me in the shamanic journey, he was also in a 20-year-old body, looking like one of those Silicon Valley like tech people that you see with glasses and all, looking very clean. Well, they shapeshift, obviously, but they're in an eternal body. And I think it was just a way to, these out-of-body experiences are a way to communicate certain ideas and certain concepts in a way that we could understand. This is the part where I want to share with you about the scoring of the game, because I feel like it's good to know exactly the nuances, the details of that. So I'm saying here, it seems to me there was an odd player that didn't get his scores high enough. Because you're scored in the game not just based on the final results, like how many goals each team scored, but also on your individual maneuvers throughout the game, the initiatives you took. So the player that was eliminated didn't take any initiative, didn't really participate. He was just running around waiting for something to happen. It felt brutal how the soldiers came for him and took him and murdered him. Or I don't know what they did, but they sent him back, basically. It looked like with a weapon. So, which I understood to be the metaphor for reincarnation. Again, that he's going to reincarnate again. That he will be sent down. He can no longer be on the spaceship because it's a consciousness level. If you're not at the level, you can't even perceive that dimension of reality. You need to be at a certain level of consciousness to be even able to perceive life beyond this reality, beyond the simulation. And this is really important because I feel, for example, people who have near-death experiences, they're almost given a chance to step out of reality, 3D reality, to wake up to a bigger, larger understanding of life. Thankfully, I never needed to do that. Because I have my own personal practice where I meditate almost religiously, and I also practice self-hypnosis, and my seeking is pretty much consistent. Like I've never stopped a day seeking in my life, and I never took reality as it is. I never took anything for granted. I always ask questions. Why am I here? What am I doing here? I ask that question every day. And then when it was the right time, I became more conscious. So what I wanted to add is this higher self man that I connect with, who I thought was God, who's also my higher self. It's very confusing because who I thought was my creator. Anyway, he's now also me after I undergone this transmutation, which has already happened. My belief is he created this avatar, sent me as a fragment of his consciousness to communicate to me. And I think it is to help. I think it is to help, to spread awareness, so that's why I'm sharing this information. because my understanding is I don't need to be here, and I think I did volunteer to be here. So, and this is what will happen when you undergo a similar transmutation experience. And so this is just where things are at, and I'm here just sharing this information to be able to share insights and to be able to share perspectives from a higher dimensional reality. And I'm totally okay with you saying that I'm making shit up, or that maybe I have a broad imagination. I'm okay with that. I do have a vivid imagination, and imagination is a great asset to have for visualization, because visualization is how you're going to be able to access some of these different dimensions. If you think about it like this, you're perceiving images on a higher dimension, not with your eye, but with your mind's eye, or you can say with your third eye. It's a very specific frequency, and it has the color indigo, and it's true, and I'm able to perceive that color whenever I go there in meditation. Anyway, yeah, this is an interesting detail, because my dad had an immortal body, a body that doesn't age, which from my 3D eyes or 4D eyes, like I was still in the aging body when I was looking at him in his immortal body. It looked a little bit fake, to be honest. It looked almost like a bodysuit that's airbrushed, which is like, it just got me thinking, like, there is a gap in perception because of it's a dimensional gap, and that also creates distortions in your perceptions, because the brain is a filter of reality. It's an encoder and a decoder, but it's a filter of reality. It's very limited and narrow, and it will allow you to see certain things within a certain light spectrum. So that's why I had this kind of bizarre experience perceiving his body looking to me like it looked a little bit fake, but I have not yet seen what the body looks like from a 6D or 5D or whatever the number is, like this, the immortal, to perceive from the immortal body. So what I also thought was interesting is not just my ability to perceive my consciousness outside of the body, but I was the watcher, because this has already happened. I'm able to review it as a tape, and this piece of information was given to me is it's almost like you're allowed to watch certain tapes. I know I'm not allowed to remember everything, and I do see the memory wipe. Like, I know that I'm conscious of things that are happening when I'm sleeping, like remote experiences, out-of-body experiences. And when I come back to the conscious of the body, I get a memory wipe, because I know there are certain things I'm not supposed to remember. But I am sharing this because it's very specific, and I am supposed to remember this, and I am supposed to share it. So it's as if you're replaying a tape of something that was recorded. Let's say I'm sitting working on my laptop, and I was filming myself. I'm able to replay the tape and see myself working. But not only that, I'm able to step into the tape and experience myself working as I'm watching the tape. So this was also really mind-blowing, that I'm able to perceive not just my body, and not just able to step out of the body and be in consciousness. I'm able to perceive my consciousness watching the body. Like in that transmutation phase, I was able to see what my conscious looks like my spirit essence, you can say, which is not in a body, but still it's still physical. You can still see it. It's not nothing. My consciousness had a shape. It was like a blob shape, but it was luminous. There were lights all around it. It was transparent, but you can still see it. So that's what so I was able to perceive even what my consciousness looked like, and that was also very mind-blowing. So anyway, I think this is it for now. Maybe one last remark, because I know a lot of my viewers believe in the prison planet theory. And like I said, there is truth to everything. Take everything with a grain of salt, first of all. Discern what is your truth. And take everything I say with a grain of salt as well. The thing that I can say about that is there is an element where you're being forced to reincarnate, like against your will almost. Like what happened on that spaceship when that guy was sent back. But to say that this is only a prison planet and there is no point and there is no spiritual evolution, that was not my experience. I tested that belief for a little bit, for a little while, and is not my experience, because what I experienced is a total metamorphosis that is incredible and amazing, where you become, instead of being a player in the game, you transcend that and you become the gardener, you know, the seeder. So I'm sure there is more yet to come, and I'm sure I will keep getting more episodes and out-of-body experiences like this, and so stay tuned. This took me a while to process, to put everything together, but I'm glad to be sharing that right now. And if there's anything that you can do, you can consider this a chapter in a book that is yet being written. And I'm just glad you're watching this with me, at the edge of my seat, not knowing what's going to happen next, but I have reasons to believe and to trust this, because what I've been shown is not only incredible but sophisticated in so many ways. And I also receive a lot of tidbits, extra information in my like almost if you're going to a university and they give you like an orientation tape to watch, I've been orientated. I'm learning things on the other side. I remember some of the things, and there are certain things that they, or I, the higher self, wants me to remember. For example, I was shown this Dome of Divinity. Almost looks like a dome in these European buildings. And it was split into grids. And every piece of the grid, almost like a rectangle or something, it was every single piece of the windows inside of the dome or this grid was a universe within a universe, like infinity. Every single thing of this grid is a universe within a universe within a universe, all ruled by feminine divinities. So whoever said that God is a female, that's right. I was shown that the overarching divinity is a feminine divinity. And there are many feminine divinities, and they're all conglomerated in this dome, overarching dome, and there's no hierarchy. They just all blend together in this dome shape. Like there's no top or peak where that's like the top. No, it's kind of like an oval shape that just bends on itself. And that was just, I guess, I was shown that as to understand the scale is the known universe that we're in is a universe within a universe, and it's a pixel window inside of a dome-shaped structure. And this pixel window, which is our infinite galaxy, is ruled by feminine divinity. I don't know if ruled is the right word. Is governed by feminine divinity. Maybe that's more accurate. And then when I got that tape, I call them tape, download tapes. 2 days later, I saw the Las Vegas Dome video. So do check that out, because it looks kind of like that. With the U2 concerts in Las Vegas, they created this amazing light dome. kind of looks like that. Like that's the scale I was looking at. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to mention is, I know the video is getting super long, but you know, I'm just rambling. You're welcome to tune out whenever possible or come back to it. I will add time codes. There is evil in this 3D life because it is a game, and every game you need a monster. So there is a demonic realm, and there is evil. There are Dracos, there are reptilians. I've been shown time and time again. And I also been shown the watchful eye in the sky, the dragon's eye. That's real, and I've seen it in my life in so many instances. And so there is that, but you can't stop there, because like I said, if you're playing a video game, it won't be a video game if there wasn't some kind of monster that you're fighting, right? If there wasn't some kind of evil, chaotic, like, yes, they are creating chaos and they're creating suffering for humans, but that's the game in so many ways. The real game is to understand, the real mission and the seeking is to understand why you're playing this game. The questions you need to ask yourself is, why are you here, and how to win this. Only you can find out. It's a fascinating journey to find your own personal God or higher self, because then you won't be needing the gods in the Bibles or the Qurans or the Old Testament or all of these religious books. And all these religious books have some truth to them, but they also have a lot of lies. It's truth embedded within a sea of lies. And you need to really discern, because this is a game. And you have to find your truth, which is going to be different from what these books are saying. And you're going to find your own version of divinity that is directly connected to you, where you feel like you are a player, not merely looked upon as a pawn, or as helpless, or stuck in a reality where you don't want to be here. There is a reason why you're here, so try to find what that is for you. Anyway, this is where I leave you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to comment or write any questions, and remember, be respectful and have compassion. Please do check my disclaimers. Everything on my channel is my creative input, and they're for entertainment purposes only. So I hope this video entertains you, and I'll see you in the next one.